Oh, hello there. Yes, well, good grief, we are trundling our way towards the spring equinox. Hooray for, well, spring, yes. Daffodils and bunnies and Easter and loveliness, yes. Anyway, yes. Yesterday was the usual sort of Sunday politics fest, such as it is. It's not really quite Brian Walden these days, but they do their best with Camilla Toomey. Yes. Anyway. Yeah, she was interviewing Wes Streeting, and she was poking him about how dreadful DEI is, yeah. But the thing about all of those kind of, well, what one might describe as shibboleths, is it plural? I suppose so. Anyway, is that nobody actually pushes back, sensibly about that. So Wes Streeting was the kind of, maybe about everything. But of course, do we want to live in a country whereby basically the best people for the job are always magically white males that went to public school and are friends of Tory MPs? I mean, you can believe that that's an okay way of doing things, but if you don't believe that, then you have to have some mechanisms to ensure that that doesn't actually happen, which comes under the banner of, DEI. Still, you aren't expected to know that. Yes, it's a bit like, the other story there was, of course, about how dreadful it is that Shakespeare's being, is being decolonised, yeah. Except all of that story, such as it is based on somebody who's an advisor to Shakespeare land, if I can put it that way, that wrote a book a while ago. That's it. That's all there is to it. Still, it enables you to get cross about things that you don't know anything about. Hooray! Anyway, talking of people that don't know anything about anything, of course, brings us neatly back to James S's, because he has been busy, having been, had stuff printed in the Daily Telegraph, his mates. He was kind of, sort of puffing his big birdie chest out. Yes, and he posted this: "I'm pleased to see the school is under investigation." Yes, except it isn't, James, are they? The school has decided to look into whether or not the actual thing that you posted up is actually a thing, because, of course, you just have created a whole bunch of problems for people at that school, even though you can just walk away from it like the glorious human being that you are. My quote, he says, "Given the widespread concerns across the country regarding illegal migration," yeah, because I'm a friend of Matt Goodwin's, "I imagine," he imagines, yes, no facts, just imagination, "the most parents would be up in arms, okay, at the thought of such ideological indoctrination." Yes, imagine a lesson which is about poor people. Mustn't have that, James, must we? Mustn't have lessons about poor people. No, unless, of course, they are magically some other group of, people that deserve our very, very special attention. Might come back to that concept in a second. But, he does love posting all of this guff. We get, for example, this, with no sense of irony at all. "Wearing a dress doesn't make you a woman any more than wearing a stethoscope makes you a doctor." Yes, but presumably just calling yourself a therapist is good enough, James, isn't it? Yes. Or indeed this one, which is out there in terms of the ability to imagine an idealised past which cannot be questioned. So let's dive into this one. Our ancestors, he means recent ancestors, very recent, who gave up their lives. Actually, a lot of our ancestors who gave up their lives wouldn't be our ancestors, because that's not the way things work. But that's just me being picky about genetics. Gave up their lives to fight for our freedoms, would be rolling in their graves if they knew that people were being pressured to apologise to men for referring to them as men. Which is a whole completely different take on the First and Second World Wars, isn't it? Yes? Yeah, it's a completely different take on, for example, people like my father, who went all the way through the Second World War. Now, if you asked him about what he was fighting for at the time, it probably would have been against fascism, against all of those horrible right-wingers that seem to have no real ability to care for other people, James. I would suggest that my certainly ancestors, very close ones, would have done that. But, that's just me knowing things, isn't it? Yes. And indeed, this is exactly exactly the type of person he was, because a few days ago he was posting this about Ramadan, because after all it's about brown people, bad people, brown people. You see, James is Jewish, and that's a kind of religion whereby we have to be, because of Judeo-Christian culture, Judeo-Christian, yes, those two things together, melting pot, one might say, but that's another problematic thing, eh? But yeah, Judeo-Christian culture, you see, Jewish people have to have this, special understanding. We need to really understand that they might see themselves as being under threat. But let's have a look at it just in this context of what he's saying. I regularly see institutional guidance instructing staff members not to eat or drink in the presence of colleagues fasting for Ramadan. Yes, good, James. Yeah, had a bit of consideration for other human beings and what they might be thinking. The whole imagination thing. Yes. Surely respect for others' religions' practices doesn't extend to pressurise compliance with the practices themselves. I don't know, James. Why don't we apply that to you? Oh, no. That would be something else, wouldn't it? Yes, that would be that would definitely be an ism, wouldn't it? Yes, anyway, the whole thing mostly, doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. Mostly what we got yesterday, of course, was stuff about reform. And aren't they doing brilliantly? Aren't they doing brilliantly? Aren't they doing brilliantly? But, if you actually have a look at lots of the reform postings, okay, it does somewhat give you a certain viewpoint about them. Now, you may recall that I was having a go at Matt Goodwin, one of my other regular ones, I suppose, but I was having a go at him because he constantly goes on, as indeed does Farage and the rest of them, about the way that there's this massive surge towards reform because everybody thinks they're really brilliant, especially amongst the young. Now, I haven't cherry-picked these, okay? These are just the ones that I saw yesterday that Reform had posted up. So we get this, for example, from Mark G. Simpson. He's the guy in the middle, I think, with the tie on. My thanks to the local Reform branch in Dartford for having me speak at the branch meeting. Yeah, now, let's look at the people in the picture, okay? Because Mark is actually the youngest one there. I'm guessing he's under 40, but not by much. That's your reformists. The reformistas. The reformerites, if you like. Like that, yeah? Let's have a look at another one. Here's Rob Madison. It's the last Saturday of campaigning. Yes, local elections. And you can see from this picture, once again, it's a particular DEI cross-section, one might say, or not. But I'm guessing that the youngest person there, once again, is closer to 40 than they are to 30. The youngest one there, okay? So far we've had, 40 people? 50? 40, let's be generous. That's 40, right? And there's this one, right? Okay, from Jamie, really strange spelling, but there we go, Jamie McIver. This is what a political party looks like when members are united against their popular leader, Nigel Farage, a first-class entrepreneurial chairman with vision, Zia Youssef. Now, I've scanned these 4 photographs here, okay? And you can, a bit like Where's Wally, actually spot somebody who probably is under 20. But collectively, if we look at these people, that is somewhere in the region of 75, 80 people in these different photos, right? Collectively, one of whom may be probably there with his dad, right? yeah, you want these people to be politically active. It is most definitely showbiz for the ugly. Anyway, God, that's me being brutal about other people, isn't it? Anyway, but yeah, that's what you get. Okay, that's your groundswell of support. Okay, this is an entirely media manufactured thing because, and I keep saying this about Reform, okay? They are the backup Conservative Party. So things are obviously going wrong with the Conservative Party. No one is going to touch them in the near future. It's going to take years to rebuild their brand. Probably not under Kemi because she's a bit rubbish. Leaving that aside, okay, what we have is this notion that what the British state needs, of course, is an American-style libertarian government, like Liz Truss, right, okay? Tax cuts for the rich, slashing welfare funding, and the rest of it, right? That's what you need. You need a Doge for the UK. And therefore, all of the big push is to put reform in front of you, and they're going to do all these things. They're promising to do all these things, right? If you ask most of the people in those photographs, even reform members, what Nigel Farage has promised to do, they will tell you X, Y, and Z about migration. Except the problem is, of course, that they haven't. They haven't promised to bring down a migration. They haven't promised to halt migration. They haven't promised to send people home. They haven't even promised that they're going to leave the ECHR. They've simply said that they will look into a referendum on leaving it as and when they come to power, which is really, really, really kicking the can down the road. And that's it, yeah? In the meantime, of course, the things they're not telling you is the fact that if you look at the voting record, as I've shown you here before, the voting record reform strongly suggests that they don't really particularly care about the working class because they are the party of money. The people that run it are big multimillionaire landowners who also want to run the party on behalf of other big multimillionaire landowners, and they are vastly supported by people like, for example, the owners of GB News, multimillionaire landowners. That's what you get. Okay, because that is what you're being fed. And all of those people that would otherwise be kind of, sitting at the sidelines, sniping at the Tories, can now start sniping at, all of those bad people to the right of reform. So we get this really odd one from Spiked, okay? Nigel Farage's ousting of Rupert Lowe has enraged a very online right that is as dodgy as it is dim, writes Tom Slater. Yes, a very online right, dodgy as it is dim, could indeed be Tom Slater, and indeed the rest of them. I give you front and centre, of course, Brendan O'Neill, the thinking man's... No, probably not, eh? Yes, because of course Spiked, you see, are there to persuade you that there's this evil elite of people who are out to get you, and you need to vote for the good insurgents like Nigel, who's definitely on your side, but not the bad insurgents like Rupo, who definitely isn't, yeah? That's the thrust of it. I mean, if we want to be honest about Spiked, of course, we might well point to them accepting a while ago to establish themselves in the position that they are, an awful lot of money from the Coke, as it is now, brother. But, of course, that is something that is never talked about. So, that's what you get, folks. You're being fed a pig in a poke. All right? And people are hoping, for example, that Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe are going to go away. But I don't think they are, because they are going to attract that particular, not your average nasty, sort of low-level home counties racist, but your vitriolic nasty types. And I do point to them here. You know their names. Yeah, around them. And they will be quite insurgent. And then it'll be very interesting to try and see the arguments against them, because just merely calling these people dim isn't going to work. Yeah, I can do that, and they're not going to listen to me, and they're sure as hell not going to listen to Tom Slater, because after all, why should they? Anyway, there you go. A variety of chickens coming home to roost. Once you open Pandora's box, it's blindingly hard to close it. Still, live by the sword, die by the sword. Yes. Anyway, it keeps them in. It keeps them in, well, I don't know, whatever it is that they want to be kept in, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the rest of us can just become poorer and poorer and poorer. Hooray! Still, it'll be spring soon. Maybe. If we're lucky, might get as far as that. Do have a gorgeous beginning to the week, and don't be insurgent. It's very bad. It's very bad to question the things. You mustn't question them. Mustn't question Nigel. Naughty.